are going to get into the wall brawl with Marshall and his news at the bottom of the hour, which was an extraordinary event in U.S. politics. Watching the leaders of a couple of parties actually hash it out in angry tones in front of cameras was pretty awesome. So we're going to highlight that throughout the morning. Joe is still not here. Hopefully he's going to join the show a little bit later. He had his hip replaced, one of his hips replaced on Monday. He's high on OxyContin or whatever it is he's taking and sleeping, but he's going to get up and join the show in a little bit, hopefully. Welcomed in, or asked to come in and welcome in, Craig Gottwas, who you've heard over the years on the Armstrong and Getty shows, we always refer to as the Obamacare lawyer. He is an expert in health care, and his job is telling clients, telling businesses where health care is going so that they can plan accordingly and, do the right thing financially. And the key to this whole thing is, and welcome to the show, Craig.
Thank you.
Just so people know, while I know you do have political leanings and I know what they are, for the business of analyzing healthcare, your clients want to know what is. Your opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah,
in fact, your opinion could cost you your job, I would imagine.
That's right. I keep it out of this as much as possible because I have clients that just need to know what's going to happen next year and in the next 5 years.
Sure, and
so
whether it's a good thing or a bad thing in your mind doesn't make any difference. They just want to know how to prepare, or in their mind, for that matter, they just want to know how to prepare financially for health care. Is there like a phrase or a word or a feeling that you could say is the general direction we're going with health care in this country?
Is this like my positive Sean one-word assessment of healthcare?
Yeah, exactly.
First off, I'm a little troubled by the brown unidentifiable smegma on Joe's microphone here. Joe.
That's
I don't
gross.
know if that's from you, Joe, or if that's from somebody that's been using this, but
I don't know what that is either. Let's see. That's disgusting.
That'll take your focus away. Healthcare, I would just say it's a slow march toward more governmentization and longer wait times and poorer care. I know that's not a great way to start them. Good morning, everybody, but it's just the trend. You know, we want more.
So let's slow down right there. So the trend, you think, is longer wait times and not as good care for health care. And then how about the price?
Though, and the price is going to increase as fast as anything out. You know, the listeners' lives. There's the only two things that I can think of that increase faster than healthcare and price, and that's your utility bill or college tuition. After that, healthcare is going to march forward, according to the government. So, according to the most conservative examples, 6% per year over the next 10 years. It's just per year inflation. So the cost is going to keep. Now, prior to 2008, when we had a really bad spiral in healthcare, we went through like a 10-year period where it was going up 10 to 12% per year. Okay, so would that lead me to believe that Obamacare was a good thing, that it slowed that down? Not necessarily. There are a couple of things that Obamacare did that might have helped in that area, but overwhelmingly, I think it's really not an effect on that. It's more of overall market forces that have occurred. Primarily, the biggest thing that's pushed healthcare inflation down, if you will, it's hard to say down when you're talking about one of the third most expensive things we buy. It's just been that businesses and individuals simply can't afford it anymore. So we've had to get into more draconian ways to keep the inflation down, like keeping doctor lists shorter, keeping cheaper networks. I mean, it's not an improvement, but it does drive cost down a little bit when you go out and you say, my health plan only has the bottom 50% of doctors according to price available to you. But I think a lot of us have just gotten used to the deductible that we now have. But it didn't used to be that way. I mean, it's just insane what my deductible is for my family. No, deductible, like the average, I was just looking at a study on this recently, the average deductible was right around $300 per family 10 years ago. Oh my God! Yeah. Listen to that! The average deductible for a family was $300 10 years ago. Yes. That's unbelievable. Yes, and now we're well over $1,500 for that same average. Right, and well, mine's much higher than that for whatever reason. Holy crap. And you don't see that changing anytime soon. No, that's going to get worse. That's going to get higher. I mean, that's part of what the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, PPACA, or Obamacare did, was to sort of legalize and kind of normalize some of these really high deductibles. And so that's part where you say, where did Obamacare decrease costs? I say, well, that's part. It really embraced sort of reducing doctor networks to get out. The most expensive doctors are removed from the panel, and it normalized deductibles that are up to $6,000-$7,000 per individual, or up to $13,000 per family. That's a lawful deductible, and it's a very common one out there in Obamacare.
Well, in the biggest state in the country, California, that often is the indicator where the whole country is going, Gavin Newsom and others have talked about some sort of universal health care. The state just covers everything, and you go in for free. I'm using my finger quotes. You go in for free, including if you're illegal, if you're not even a citizen. You see that happening?
Well,
and would that work? I think I know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, okay, so the trends that you asked me to talk about at the very beginning, the fact that we're going to have longer wait times, poorer care, more government in healthcare. That's a perfect example of it, right? So California sort of leads the nation in some of these areas, and one of the things that is a big push in California right now is to get some sort of health care for all out there, and all in California's definition means anybody living within its borders, whether they're here lawfully or not. So if you have a system that's stressed, if you have doctors that are leaving the system because they cannot handle the bureaucratization of it, and they're burning out at record numbers, and you have wait times that are already longer than we've ever had in our lives, and you go ahead and add a couple of million more people just into one state as an example, you're going to have, longer wait times, more burnout, less quality care.
Well, for people listening in other states, what I don't get about this idea for California, if it would happen, is like I've got my youngest kid's got health problems, and it's pretty expensive. And luckily I'm in a position where I can afford it. But if I wasn't, and I live in Montana or whatever, I'd say, honey, we got to move to California so that we get this taken care of for free, using my finger quotes again. How do we not end up with every cancer patient and an autistic kid in the country moving to California and throwing the whole system out of whack? Wouldn't that just happen?
Over time, it would. And we actually see this. California has a state right that we created in the 1970s for children with developmental disabilities other than autism. Autism was too big. We couldn't do it. But it's called the Lanterman Act. And what the Lanterman Act means is that if you move to California, you have the right to California state-supported government assistance for your child or your adult child with developmental disabilities.
Didn't know that.
So we regularly do get people that move here from other states just to get the access to that care that they need, and it's a wonderful impetus, but it's expensive. I mean, it's part of why California is one of the most expensive states in the country.
A lot of these things are very nice, and they sound very nice, and I can understand why someone would want to take advantage of it. I can understand why you'd want to move to a state that's going to cover, your cancer treatments if it was going to bankrupt you, but I don't see how it works for that state and the taxpayers.
That's right. It only works for the state as long as it works for the state, and that's a simple answer, but it's to say, look, I mean, the West Coast and California in particular tends to have really nice weather and a lot of things that really attract people. It also has some of the highest taxes. So those taxes will have to go up, and there will be a tipping point where we start to see people leaving the state and a budget deficit that will force cuts. It will force broccoli eating, if you will, in Joe's vernacular, in memory of Joe.
Right. Which has an effect on the whole country.
In memory of?
In memory of Joe.
Yeah, wow. Craig just killed off Joe.
After seeing the brown stuff on his mic, I'm not sure he could be alive.
Craig just killed off Joe. Joe's not dead. He got a hip replacement, and I talked to him last night. He's fine.
But he was tweeting at 1:30 this morning.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Wow. Once again, middle of the night, OxyContin Hayes tweeting. He probably said some reprehensible things. I'll have to take a look at that. But Craig is going to stick around because we're going to get into some more details on this coming up, including we have to be reminded about how much government health care there already is, which I didn't know until Craig explained that to us, which is really interesting. Marshall's News on the way, the wall brawl, and the fallout from that, all coming up on the Armstrong and Getty Show. So I think we got something way wrong on the Google searches yesterday, according to somebody that knows a lot about search engines, and we're going to talk about that later. And Sean did some more Googling around and image searches and stuff. So I want to get into that as Google was on the hot seat yesterday in front of Congress.
Who got it wrong? Was it me? I need names. Did I get it wrong?
I'll take full responsibility.
All right.
So Craig Gottwas joins us, our Obamacare lawyer. We've called him over the years. He's an expert in healthcare and costs and all that sort of stuff. A couple of things I want to jam in here before you have to run. People like me don't want government-run healthcare because I believe it's going to end up looking like the DMV or the VA system, and I don't know how it wouldn't. I mean, I've never heard a credible argument for how we don't end up looking like that. But anyway, how much government healthcare do we already have?
Yeah, this statistic surprises everybody, and it comes from places like the UCLA Institute on Health. I mean, this is not a politically slanted statistic. So when you add together Medicare, which is for oldsters, Medicaid, which is for low income, now the Obamacare subsidies, you add together the VA, you add together TRICARE, which is how we cover people active in the military and their families. And then you add together one other statistic that bumps it up, and that's all the people that work for the government, right? Because taxpayers are paying that bill as well. All that adds together nationally as 64% of all healthcare dollars come from the taxpayer.
So we're already 2/3 of the way there.
We're already 2/3 of the way there. And if you look at you say, well, what's the highest state? Well, once again, of course, the highest state happens to be California. That's 70%. And the best projection I've seen says this will be 67 to 68% 10 years out. I mean, the march just continues. Now, one other statistic on that I haven't shared with you before. When you add together what that raw dollar amount is per person, per taxpayer, it is more than most of the socialized countries in the world. So we already pay more.
So this is an argument by some for going full-on government health care, is that we're getting the worst of both worlds.
It is. It is. And one thing that people never talk about in this, I teach classes on healthcare at universities, and one of the things that I always start with on the students is, hey, why do we spend so much on healthcare, guys?
Is this going to be on the test?
Yes, it is, Sean. Take notes. I want to make sure people understand, because we can. We are the richest country on the planet, and we can. We spend the most on research and development and patenting new designs and products because we can. Now, you go full socialized, you take the profit motive out of a lot of that work,
right,
and you bring costs way down. There's no doubt about it. Canada rides on our coattails in a lot of sense. Not just Canada, but all the other socialized countries.
There wouldn't be a man in Canada could get an erection if we hadn't done the research and development. Bring the blue pill. So that's okay. So that's one topic you put together, because you sent this to me the other day, and I want to make sure we have time for this. You call it the Armstrong and Getty Ultimate State Freedom Rankings. How did you put this together, and why? Well,
I've heard you and Joe over the years talking about all of the subjective sort of fluffy stuff that goes into these state rankings. Like you mentioned, recycling centers in every state, and weather, which is very subjective.
Yeah, if you hear a list on the radio or TV and says the 5 best places to live, and then they rank them, and you think, oh, that's interesting. If you look at the criteria, sometimes it includes how many places in town you can plug in your electric car, or other crap I don't care about.
Well, if you guys don't like mailbox murals, then I guess we're just different people.
This list may not be for Sean. So what I wanted to do was put together what I thought was the most objective Armstrong and Getty driven criteria list I could find. So I took what I think are probably the 4 most reputable state ranking lists, and it helps to understand what they are. One of them is the Cato Freedom Ranking of 2018, which is a really cool one for people that want to go look at it, because you can actually, in that one, customize what matters to you more. Like, for example, does open marriage policies and marijuana law, does that matter to you more than taxes, for example?
Gotcha.
And you can actually customize that one. But that's just purely on how free an individual is in a state.
Even more impressive when you realize that Cato does all of their research in the pool house outside of OJ's place.
Yeah, it's with a funny accent.
The Cato Kalin joke's what it is.
The second criteria is the Mercatus Institute at George Mason University. That's looking just at the fiscal condition of a state. So how likely your state is able to pay its bills. The third criteria is the Tax Foundation's ranking of states on business friendliness, so looking primarily at tax policy. And then the last one is the Kiplinger state-by-state guide to personal tax friendliness for an individual. So again, mostly looking at income tax, but of course, sale and property tax are factored in. So to make it as neutral as I could, I just took those 4 rankings, I put them into one spreadsheet, I tallied them up and averaged the state ranking going across the board per state.
I know you call this your Mona Lisa.
This is my Mona Lisa. This is my Armstrong and Getty Mona Lisa, because this is going to help determine where we live someday, Jack.
So people always like the top 5 and bottom 5. Tell us that.
Yeah, so let's start with the bottom 5.
Least free?
Least free, yeah, and we'll go from 46th to 50th, so the best of the before you get down to the bottom. So 46th is Vermont. 47th, Connecticut. 48th, a place where you have a strong presence, California. Go figure. 49th, New York. And the least free state, when you cobble all of this together, New Jersey.
I knew it.
So
I didn't know it.
The two biggest blue states in the country are at the bottom of that list, New York and California.
Boy, yeah.
So, and it depends on what you prioritize, obviously.
That's right.
But okay, that's interesting stuff right there. So let's get to the top, the freest.
Top 5. So we'll start with number 5, a state you hear about because they had the Free State Project, where a bunch of libertarians moved there in an effort to make this state more free, and that's New Hampshire.
Right next door to Vermont.
Right next door to Vermont, which is way, way down the list, as we just talked about. Yeah, and it's the only state, interestingly enough, when you look at the top 10, you get down to 11th before you find another eastern state.
That's interesting on its own. I don't want to get bogged down on that, but I wonder how much moving there is across state lines, because, if you've ever driven around there, they're tiny states.
Yes.
Tiny states right next door to each other, and one is like high tax, little personal freedom, and the other's the exact opposite, right next door. Same people, grew up in the same part of the country, same weather, That's really interesting.
Yeah. Number 4, the state topic with much of Sean's favorite television shows, Alaska. Number 3, right next door to where we happen to be sitting, Nevada. Number 2, North Dakota. And number 1, there's another free state, Florida, another eastern state that I missed.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, there is going to be a future iteration of this ranking that I will share with Armstrong and Getty. We're going to look at the affordability in each state. We're going to look at retirement friendliness in each state. And then it's been suggested to me that we should probably look at whether that state is trending more blue or more red under the ideology that more blue means more government, more regulation, and could take
generally means higher taxes.
Right, and could take a state like Nevada that's sitting in third and maybe make their future less bright, because a lot of people think Nevada will ultimately have to have a personal income tax.
Whether a state is going to be able to stay solvent is an interesting one, because you definitely care when you live in the state, but the difference between that and a country is things go south, you can just step across the border and it's not your problem anymore.
That's right. And if you're looking at a ranking like this to determine where you want to live, it kind of depends on where you are in life. Do you have 20 or 30 years left? Or that's one thing. If you have 60 years left, you probably don't want to be in one of those states.
Joe and I often wonder which state is going to go bankrupt first, Illinois or California, and will the rest of the country bail that state out? My guess has always been is that the first state to go bankrupt gets bailed out because everybody will feel sorry for it. The second one, everybody's going to say, no, wait a second.
Yes.
And the second one's going to be screwed.
I think that's exactly right. I don't see that ever happening twice.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like the big bailout. Anything you want to hit us with before you got to leave? Thanks for bringing the donuts, by the way. That's just what I need this time of year. Speaking of healthcare costs, I've thrown off all sensible responsibility for eating for some reason. I mean, I've just completely checked out of it. I'm like a child at this point.
It's the time of year. And it's amazing. The more you talk about it on the radio and hanging out with you on the boat, I realize I've started to do that too more, and I think I'm going to blame you for it.
I'm just a
packing
weak
on the winter weight. That's all.
God, it's interesting. Habits and willpower. It's almost like a dam bursting. You can have willpower for a while, and then it gets a little crack, and then if you indulge that crack in your willpower, it's just on.
And it totally
that's my sweet spot.
It totally spills over. It spills over into every aspect of life.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with challenges at work and challenges at home, the willpower to eat well just goes right out the window for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a reservoir that you can call upon, and if you're using too much of it at home, you're not going to use it on the diet.
Yeah, and there's some psychological belief in that very idea right there. If you're using all your willpower in your other areas, it's hard to apply it here. Anyway, that's good stuff. Do you want people to go to a website or anything to get this information, or are you hiding it for yourself so you can sell it, or what are you going to do?
No, you can always Google my name is the easiest way, Craig Gottwas, or just hit Benefit Revolution. You Google Benefit Revolution, my website comes up. That's me. It's the easiest way to find me.
Let's absolutely make sure we've got a good, clear link of that at ArmstrongandGetty.com so people can find it. Really appreciate you coming in. When Craig said earlier in honor of Joe is not dead.
No, he's not.
He's not?
It feels like he is without him here.
Actually, he's perfectly fine. I think he's calling in a couple of minutes. So
outstanding.
But
Hi,
thanks.
Joe. Miss you.
Craig Gottwas, the Obamacare lawyer. Thanks for coming in. We got the Google thing wrong. We're going to straighten that out coming up on the Armstrong and